hadn't inherited his eye colour. Her birth father had died when she was just 1. With no remaining family in Suffolk, Mother had told her that a year later she had packed up their things and moved to Leeds, with Nancy in one hand and a single suitcase in the other, to lodge with an old family friend. She had soon met and married Jacob, and Nancy's half-sister Violet had arrived a few years later. After kissing their father goodbye and closing the front door behind him, Nancy's mother glanced at the table clock ticking on the sideboard. "Come along, girls. We don't want to be late for school," she said. "But it's still early. We don't need to leave yet," said Nancy, also looking at the clock. Her mother was in her peculiar mood again, just as she had been all week. "Violet, your blouse!" fretted their mother, noticing the stain and looking at her youngest daughter in dismay. "Nancy, please help Violet find a clean one upstairs." "But," Nancy started to protest. "Now, please, Nancy," said Mother in a voice that meant business. "I can find it on my own," piped up Violet. "No, your sister will help. Off you go. I expect you both to be downstairs in 5 minutes with your coats, hats, and shoes on," said their mother firmly, taking off her apron, smoothing the fabric of her long, dove-grey skirt, and adjusting the enamel brooch at the neck of her blouse. Nancy sighed and looked down at her little sister, her dark wayward hair and pink cheeks. She raised her fingers to her own walnut-brown, shoulder-length curls that were neatly braided, and reminded herself that Violet was only 7 and could not be expected to do everything by herself, no matter how much Nancy might wish for it. "Why is Mother in such a hurry today?" Violet asked as they traipsed upstairs. "I have no idea," sighed Nancy. "I have a mathematics test at school, and I certainly don't want to be early for that." The drizzle dulled everything to grey as Mother hurried Nancy and Violet along on their 20-minute route to school. Nancy tightened the ribbons on the straw hat that she wore day in, day out, now that spring had supposedly arrived, and walked ahead, enjoying the distance from Violet, who chattered incessantly. She strode past the greengrocer's, admiring the arrangement of imported pineapples and mandarins in the window, past the newspaper boy on the corner who tipped his cap to her and bellowed, "Halley's comet! Get your latest news here!" She stood for a second and looked at the headlines on the front of his stand. "Friday, 13th May, 1910. Nation continues to mourn the death of King Edward VII. Fears of Halley's comet are foolish and unfounded." Every evening for the past month, Nancy had been scouring her father's copy of the Leeds Mercury newspaper for articles about Halley's comet, which was due to pass by the Earth after an absence of 75 years. Advances in science meant that this time the presence of a toxic cyanogen gas in the comet's tail had been detected. Her father had explained that this in itself was not thought to be a problem, but as the Earth was due to travel directly through the comet's tail in less than a week's time, there had been some talk that the gas would be deadly to humankind. The closer the comet got to Earth, the clearer it became, and for the past week Nancy had watched for it from her bedroom window, wondering if she should be worried about it. For some scientists were telling people to stay indoors, seal up their windows, wear protective gas masks, and take preventative anti-comet pills to stop themselves from being poisoned. Nancy knew her father was firmly of the opinion that the comet would cause no ill effects, and anticipated its arrival keenly. But she noticed her mother's cheeks would become drawn and pale when anyone spoke of the comet. This caused a glimmer of unease to rise in Nancy's chest, and she wondered whether her mother perhaps had a different view that she was keeping to herself. Could that be why she had been standing in the garden looking at the night sky a little fearfully? Nancy nodded to the paperboy and strode past 2 women wearing the fashionable hobble skirts that her mother despised so, preferring more fluid skirts and dresses instead. "They are called hobble skirts for a reason, Nancy," she would say. "I will not have my stride restricted by such a ridiculous garment." Omnibuses rumbled by, passengers packed like sardines on their way into the city for a day of work. Motor cars occasionally overtook the buses. There were more on the roads than ever, and her father had even said quite casually,